All right, everyone. Welcome once again to the Faces of Business. I'm your host, Damon Pistulka, and with me today, I've got Bill Brady from Troomi Wireless. Bill, thanks for being here today.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Super excited to be here with you.
I am really excited to have you here as well. It's so cool because honestly, I don't think I've ever talked to a tech person on this show yet.
Well,
Now,
I own a tech company. I don't know that I'm the tech person. Let's
there we
clarify
go.
that right out of the gate.
there, there we go. There we go. I talked to somebody from a tech company, though. That's what I can say. This is cool because if people haven't heard about Trumy Wireless before, we're going to talk about that a little bit. But Bill, tell us a little bit about your background. I mean, you were at BYU and you were like student body president.
I
It's
was. Yeah.
yeah. That's pretty cool. I mean, because you actually at that level in a university, you're managing a pretty good sized budget. You got a lot of people that are doing a lot of things.
Yeah, it was a phenomenal experience. My whole life, I've always been drawn to politics and leadership. And um, this is going to sound nerdy, but I've been the student body president of every school I've attended. I was the student body president of my elementary school, my high school, and BYU. Um,
Awesome.
and I guess grad school. I get grad school breaks the mold for that. I didn't. It wasn't student body president at grad school, but yeah, I've always just been drawn to that kind of thing, and it was a really neat experience at BYU to work with so many students and
Mm-hmm.
be very closely involved with the school administration. And we worked on some big projects that year that still have an impact today on student life on campus. So that's been kind of fun to watch.
Oh yeah, that's cool. That's cool when you can help to shape some of the aspects of the college.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. I saw that. I had to ask about it because I mean, you just don't see that very often because there's not that many. So it's good. So tell me a little bit about your background so people kind of understand, because we're going to talk today about Troomi Wireless. It's a wireless phone system and phones for children and to help them. We're going to talk about how that it really helps building healthy technology relationships right from the get go, and some of the incredible features of the systems you guys have developed there. But give us a little bit about your background and kind of how you got where you are today doing what you're doing.
Yeah. So I'm actually a marketer by trade. Uh, Early on, I don't know, I was in my early 20s, 20,
Hmm.
21 maybe. And while I was saving money to actually move from Canada to attend BYU, I was working a couple jobs, and the Canadian dollar at the time was just brutal. It was worth 60
Hmm.
cents American. And so I was working two jobs. One of them was selling newspaper advertising. And it was in that process that I really kind of developed, a love of communication and marketing and that kind of thing. And that's what I ended up studying at Brigham Young University. And all the way back then as a student, so this is going back a few years now. But even back then, email was a new thing. There were no smartphones, there was no text messaging,
Yeah.
there was certainly no social media.
Hmm.
But even back then, I had this concern that showed up in a lot of the papers I wrote for school as I was studying communication about the dehumanizing effect of technology on the way we communicate. And there were, some great authors at the time. Trying to remember a couple titles for you, but I did a lot of reading about the potential danger of
Yeah.
what too much technology might do to humans. And at the time, I was just thinking in the context of adults, but then I became a dad. And, that's really my most important job is I'm a dad.
Yeah.
And I've
Yeah.
got five phenomenal kids. My oldest turned 18 just this past weekend, and my youngest turned 6 this past week. So I've
Wow.
got, you know,
You're
that big
busy.
span right there. Yeah,
You're just busy.
I
So
am.
so first of all,
It's good.
how many sports weekends do you and your wife split and go? I mean, you just kind of see each other in passing or hand a sandwich off to the other one while you grab the kids and go to the next one. Is that pretty much
That's
normal?
that's every weekend and 2 or 3 times during the week. Yeah.
That's
Getting
awesome.
having your oldest turn 16 and get their driver's license is about the
Yes.
best thing ever.
Yeah. Yeah. That's just like that's a godsend right there because that
Yeah.
that just get another driver in the family. It's a wonderful thing. But no, those are wonderful times. I can remember back with our we had two kids. It was much easier. Only one played sports, but uh, those are wonderful times with your children to be able to be out there watching them have fun, watching them play, getting to meet all the other parents and the wonderful relationships you build with those people as well. It's a great time.
Oh,
It's a
yeah.
great it's a great
Yeah.
time. Uh,
So, you know, it was in this process of becoming a dad that, you know, all of my concerns about technology got a lot more personal.
yeah,
And, you know, my wife and I, from the very beginning of our marriage, asked a lot of questions about, okay, how are we going to handle things like video games? You know, later it was, you know, are we going to have video game consoles? Or are we not going to? How are we going to encourage our kids to be outside and playing instead of just sitting on the couch and watching TV?
yeah.
And credit to my wife on this, like that she's just always been very, very conscientious.
Hmm.
And you know, she does a challenge with our kids every year to spend 1,000 hours outside.
Oh, that's
Which
cool.
is phenomenal. So, you know, when the whole question of phones came up, uh, it was, you know, there were issues involved that we were already thinking about and aware of. And certainly all of that accelerated with smartphones and social media. And, you know, just with some of my background, I think we've always been really sensitive to, we don't want to just give our kids everything. We want to introduce technology to them in a more measured way. Certainly, they've got to learn how to use it. That's part
Yeah,
of life.
yeah,
And to be effective adults, they're going to have to learn how to use technology. But we just didn't want to say, hey, take it all at once. Good luck. You know, we
yeah,
wanted it to be a more measured approach, a more graduated approach where they could have what they needed that was truly appropriate for their age
yeah.
and not give them more than that until the legitimate need existed. We talk a lot about being purposeful or intentional in the
Hmm.
way that technology is used in our family.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting that you're thinking about it in a stepped approach, right? And we've seen some of the other technologies out, and we'll talk about Troomi in a minute. It's just one of these things that I've seen think that has tried over the years because even when my son, who's 22 now, was young, they had the little we had the little phone that had like four numbers in it that it could call, and it really wasn't much more than that. And then I think they had some watches
Yep.
that came out that my nephew had and but the thing that really strikes me is what you've done at Troomi, and we'll talk about it in a moment, but you really have structured this so people can build that relationship with technology over time, allowing the appropriate uses as we get old, as the children get older. um so we're when you sat back and you thought about Troomi and the fact of technology that will help these kids to really build a healthy relationship. Did did you guys like go and consult with people and figure out, okay, what are the kinds of things that they should have at each age and
Yeah.
this and that? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had a little bit of experience in the industry, you know,
Uh-huh.
from another venture that I worked on, but really it came down to a lot of research. My partner and I talked to 300 moms.
Oh wow.
We also commissioned a nationwide research study through a market research firm out of Los
Yeah.
Angeles, and you know, very, very scientifically based study
Yep.
where they talked to over 800 parents. And really we wanted to test our own assumptions and our own biases, frankly, and our own preferences against, you know, what does everyone else in the country say? Not just
Yeah.
where we live, but coast to coast. What are the
Hmm.
attitudes about kids and devices?
Yeah.
And you won't be surprised to know that the what we learned in this research was parents from every background are becoming increasingly concerned and conscientious about the way kids adopt technology. It's not just certain demographic groups or certain ideological or religious groups. It's everyone. And the issues that stand out, number one is safety. You know,
Yeah.
I want my kids to be safe online, safe from, you know, pornographic or violent content, but also safe from predators and bullies and people that would do harm.
Yeah.
And Damon, the one that's really growing is not what was obvious a couple years ago, and that's the safety from a lot of the mental challenges and
Yeah.
emotional challenges that are springing up, you know, in kids from coast to coast. You know, we're learning, it used to be a theory. It's not a theory anymore. It's
Yeah.
as plain as day. And Facebook and Instagram, you know, Facebook knows this, as the Wall
Hmm.
Street Journal pointed out in a series of articles this last year. Um, Social media is dangerous for kids in terms of creating stress, anxiety, depression, this
Yeah.
overwhelming feeling, especially in young girls, of not being good enough, of not being beautiful enough, of
Yeah.
not having what my friends have and doing what my friends do. And there are some authors. There's one researcher out of California. I think she's at UC San Diego, and she talks about us being on the cusp of the biggest mental health crisis our country has ever known because
Hmm.
of the effect of technology and all our great, beautiful, you know, young people. What a tragedy! I
Yeah.
mean, what a tragedy if the damage that's being done to our kids is happening right at their fingertips and right under our noses, literally.
Well,
As parents, we've got to be more conscientious.
yeah, and one of the things that you brought up, I think, is really pertinent in this is all parents are concerned, right? So it's all parents are concerned, first of all, and second of all, it's not a we think, it's we know that this is causing these kind of if nothing else, the bullying and the other stuff, but the mental and emotional problems that these things are causing, as if we're exposing our children to them un unmetered or unrestricted from a young age until whenever, it's a lot more difficult for them to develop the kinds of relationships and self-image
Yeah,
that they really would without it. And
yeah.
that, so when we talk about what were some of the things that you learned in this research that really surprised you?
You know, one of the biggest surprises was that there was no correlation to, for example, conservatism. You know, a lot of people would assume that, oh, if you're uptight about these things, you must be
Yeah.
an old fuddy-duddy, you know, religious zealot
Yeah.
and, you know, political conservative. Not at all. Like zero correlation. Zero. None.
So every parent agrees on one thing, at least: we want to protect our kids.
Yeah. You know, and so I think, you know, that a lot of people have perhaps assumed that. Um, but and credit to the media for this, frankly, Damon. Credit to the media for getting out the facts and the concerns. And there's a lot more conversation happening now in the public forum about some of the dangers that are out there. We didn't talk about it 10 years ago,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you know, look at the New York Times has run a phenomenal set of articles. The Today Show has done a variety of segments. The Wall Street Journal has done a variety of articles, and more it's okay. It's okay as a parent to say, I don't want to give my kids all the technology right up front. I
Yeah.
want to be more measured. I want to be more thoughtful about that process. One of the things that's emerged from all of the conversation that the media has done, and if you've watched on Netflix, I'd invite everyone to watch The Social Dilemma on Netflix,
Yes.
and that makes it clear that the people who build the technologies keep their kids away from it.
Mm-hmm.
That should tell you something.
Mm-hmm.
If the very people who build this stuff say, "Yeah, I'm not going to give that to my kids," that's pretty telling.
Yes. Well, I mean, hey, let's be honest. The social media platforms, whatever platform you're talking about, are there to make money. They're there to make money. And the primary driver of revenue for them is ad spend. And that's going to come from whatever group they deem is appropriate to advertise on their platform. And the better they can target you, the more money they can make. That's simple. And it's the social dilemma, other things like this. And social media is going to be social media, and it's great for some people. But when you're young like that, the influential effects of it can be so much greater if you're not ready to really try to filter. Because
Right.
as an adult, it's almost impossible.
It is. It's
But
hard.
as a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old, it is impossible. You just take it for reality in a lot
Yeah.
of cases, um, for whatever it is. So I think that's really telling that these so many media outlets are coming out with it and really exposing or showing us what could be the effects and what we really should be concerned about with these types of technology.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
So when so let's talk about Troomi Wireless a little bit, because Troomi Wireless is a combination of Google-based cell phones and a system behind it that allows you to buy a cell phone. And I believe you said you use Samsung cell phones. And as my children age, I can set it up for my 8-year-old, and then when they're 9 or 10 or 11, I can adjust the way that phone works to their age. So let's talk about this, because this is what I think is pretty phenomenal about the Troomi system, because it's not like you said before, is you send your, like I did with my son, sent him to school with a little phone that had four, I think there were 4 or 5 numbers you could program into it, and everybody looked at it and kind of made fun of him.
Right.
So let's talk about the Troomi system a little bit, and then you mentioned some feedback you got from one of your kids too. I'd like you to include that. So
Yeah. Absolutely. So, I mean, kind of back up one step to kind
yeah.
of the whole landscape in general. If you're a parent, and most parents are getting phones for kids younger and younger because very few people have a landline anymore at home, right? So if
Hmm.
you've got a kid home babysitting the other kids, I mean, it's imperative they have something, you know, or it wouldn't be safe for them to
Yeah.
be babysitting. So that age keeps coming down. And if you're a parent saying, okay, I'm going to get my child's first phone for them, right now there's this spectrum in the landscape. On one end, you could say, hey, I'm going to get my child a $1,300 iPhone,
Yeah.
and it can do anything and everything, and I'll just give it to them. They'll figure it out. Good luck. You know, more and more parents are realizing that's not necessarily the smartest way to do it
Yeah.
because of the inherent dangers of everything that iPhone can do. On the other end of the spectrum, there have been a variety of solutions that have come out over several years. Frankly, there's been this realization of, hey, we need to be able to give kids something. Whether think there was something called the relay device. Didn't look like a phone at all, just a little pod that you could talk into. There was the Gizmo watch from Verizon that came out,
Yeah.
where you could have 9 phone numbers and some canned text messages. And More recently, there have been some devices that look more like the smartphone form factor, but are very, very limited, locked down to talk and text only.
Okay.
And frankly, for a younger kid, that's fantastic. That's great. If you're giving a phone to an 8-year-old and it does talk and text only, I applaud that 100%.
Mm-hmm.
The challenge is that that only stays practical for so long. And this is where my journey began, where I had given my own daughter, this is what you were alluding to. My own daughter, she's my second daughter. When she was 12, we gave her her first phone, and it was one of these very locked down, limited devices, talk and text only. The day that we gave it to her, she was excited. She was thrilled to have her first phone finally.
Yep.
30 days later, she never had it with her. And when I say never, I mean literally never. It sat on the kitchen counter and collected dust. And so I pulled her aside and I said, "Hey, Jenna, you got to give us some feedback here. We got this device. We need you to have it with you so we can reach you. That's why we got it. How can you never have it with you?" And she said some things that really changed my paradigm about, what should go into a phone for kids. And she said, "Dad, it's just not that useful to me. It doesn't do any of the stuff I want it to do. So why would I have it with me?" And so my initial response was a little defensive. And I said, "Well, we're not doing social media. So what are the things that you want to do?"
Yeah.
And and she went down a list of half a dozen things that made me sit back as a dad and go, "Huh, yeah, those are all great." For example, she wanted, a higher quality device that had a great camera. She said, "Photography is my hobby, but I've got to have a camera that takes good pictures. I'd like to have an app for graphic design. I have to have Canvas and Google Classroom for school. It's mandatory, it's required. I'd like to be able to use like Google Docs or other apps like that for school." And she listed off a few other things, and I just sat there going, I don't fault you, Jenna. I get it.
Yeah. You talked right to the user base there.
And that's where the vision for Troomi really evolved. It was, hey, what if we could give parents a device that they could give to their kids where the parent could custom fit that to the maturity and the very specific needs of an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old or a 15-year-old, and have that device remain practical and relevant to them, where they don't outgrow it in 6 months. And so that's what we set out to do. And we built an operating system called Kidsmart OS that we put on Samsung devices. And with that operating system, created what we call the phone that grows with your kids. And that's really the effect that we've in the offering we've brought to market.
Yeah. Yeah. Because this is what I think is really interesting and so different from other systems that you develop, because you've talked about this operating system that you developed, and explain a little bit about that, because I think this is really something, as you talk about my child is getting older and how we can adjust the phone as my child gets older.
Yeah, thank you. The first challenge, the first thing that we put a lot of thought into was ease of use. There are some good controls on Apple devices.
Yep.
There are some good controls on Android devices. They're hard to use. They're complex. They're hard to keep up on. Frankly, kids can outsmart them.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we wanted to come up with something that kids couldn't circumvent, uh, and that was also easy, just so easy that to use that a parent wouldn't get tired and give up. It would be easy for them to set up and easy for them to make any changes they wanted to make. So all of the controls for the phone are not on the phone. They're in what we call the Troomi parent portal. and a parent logs into their parent portal, and that's where they make the decisions for each child's specific phone environment. We have 3 Troomi phones in our family. Each one is set up differently.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a one size fits all. It's literally, here are the settings for Ainsley's phone, here are the settings for Jenna's phone, etc. And easy. So, for example, the first decision that a parent makes is, do I want to turn on safe listing? That was one of the other complaints I had about other technologies was, yeah, something might be talk and text only, but if that kid can talk or text with anyone can reach them. They're getting spam calls. They're getting
Mm-hmm.
weird voicemails from, drug
Who
dealers.
knows?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that
Who
doesn't
knows?
help the situation.
Yeah.
So, we put something called safe listing on our phone where a parent can say, hey, only people on the contact list that I build in the parent portal can reach my child. It could be 5 phone numbers. It could be 500 phone numbers. There's no limit. But if your name is not on and your number is not on that list, you cannot call, period.
Yeah.
You cannot text. And we even have it set up so kids can add their own phone numbers. They meet a new friend at school. They want to get that friend's phone number. The child can still add that to the list. And depending on the level of security, for an older kid, they can just add it to the list. For a younger kid, you might have it set that so that you still get to approve it inside the parent portal.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. The second thing is deciding, do I want to allow group text and picture messages? That's one click. I can turn that on. I can turn that off. Where it really starts to get into some different functionality to meet the needs of kids is through a safe browser that we built. So that was one of my daughter's complaints, that she has to use a browser for some projects at school, and
Mm-hmm.
frankly, for some of her hobbies. And let's be honest, there's a lot of garbage on the internet. There's also a lot of fantastic stuff on the internet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so our vision was, as parents, let's create in the parent portal a place where you can say, yes, I want to enable the Kidsmart browser, we call it.
Mm-hmm.
And there you designate what website domains are available. So by default, everything is turned off. And then you just say, hey, I want to allow these 5, 10, 15, 50 domains. And then when the kid opens that browser, they can literally only go to those domains. There's no search bar. There's no place to type in a URL. It's literally a list of the approved websites, and they can go to those websites.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So a young person begins to learn how to use the internet responsibly, and you have peace of mind that they're not looking at dirty pictures and watching
Yeah.
violent videos and just wasting hour after hour after hour on social media, but they're still getting the resources they need. And then the last thing is through the addition of what we call Kidsmart Apps. There's no app store on the phone, but again, inside the parent portal, we have curated a suite of apps that we have vetted for safety. And we've made, right now there's about 70 that are available, where as a parent you can say, yeah, and we suggest sitting down with your child and doing this beside each other. What are the apps that you need? What are the apps that you'd like from this list? Okay, let's add this one, this one, this one, this one, etc. And you can have constructive conversations about each and decide whether it's time, whether it's not time.
Mm-hmm.
No social media, no harmful games, nothing that leads to pornographic content. All of that stuff we keep out, but the kids can get some of the apps they need for school and music and healthy hobbies, and they love it. That gives parents the ability to make the phone relevant again to an 8-year-old
Yeah.
or a 15-year-old.
Yeah.
And that's what people are really resonating with.
Yes. And you said too, now there was a couple other features that I really liked when we were talking about the parent portal, is like you can read all the text messages from the parent portal.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, David, every parent can picture this moment, right? Of
Yeah.
all right, hey, it's time to do a weekly look at your text messages. Parents should be doing that. Parents should be checking in on kids' text messages. I
Yeah.
I believe, and but no one likes that moment of, okay, hand over your phone. What's your password? Okay, I'm going to read these while I stand here in front of you. Parents hate that and kids hate that. So we built remote text monitoring right into the parent portal so that
Yeah.
and we don't suggest hiding it. Kids should know that parents have access, that they can
Hmm.
see. It's not a secret, but it means that I can look at my kids' text messages anytime, anywhere, and just make sure that they're not getting into any dangerous
Yeah.
situations, that they're using good etiquette and learning, good
Yeah.
communication skills for kind of this online world. And if I ever see anything that's concerning, I can say, "Hey, let's talk about that conversation you had with Marcy." You
Yeah.
know, and having that right in the parent portal is something that people love, 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 love.
Yeah. I had to fib to my kids and told them that I could do it anyway. I can still remember that years ago. I mean, like I said, my kids are older, but I can remember telling them, I can read your text messages from our account, so don't. They never tested it, but it's funny. I wanted to just say thanks. Kevin Heisler's on here. He said he's getting starting to go through this, so he's going to be checking out the Troomi options.
Awesome.
Kevin is with Gen Alpha Technologies in Wisconsin there. So awesome having you today, Kevin. But so when you started to do this, so you get the system, you get the phones and stuff. What are some of the things that you hear from people that you go, man, I never thought about that, but it's really cool.
In terms of things we're hearing from parents, or how do you mean?
Yeah, things you're hearing from parents, things you're hearing from kids using the devices, just
Oh,
feedback you're getting.
yeah. So a couple stories. This one I just loved. Just loved. We got a letter from a 14-year-old girl recently who went out of her way. Her mom didn't even know about it. And she wrote a letter to us. And in the letter, she explained that previously she had an iPhone. She'd gotten into some trouble. She didn't tell us what it was.
Yeah, yeah,
And but her mom had taken away her phone for 2 months. And mom said, okay, it's time for you to get a phone again, but we're not doing social media, sweetheart. It's just not worth it. So here's a new phone. It's called Troomi, and there's no social media on it. And at first, and the girl described that at first she was like, but then she realized, hey, I should be really thankful because of these Troomi people, I get a phone again, and it's a nice phone. It's a high quality Samsung phone. But here's the best part that I loved the most. She said at the end of the letter, she said, who would have imagined that I could be so happy without social media? And she said, I love not having to worry about it. Thank you so much.
yeah,
And that was really validating for us, that a 14-year-old girl in New York City who had the habit of being on social media could step back and say, hey, I realize I'm better off without it.
yeah,
So that was a cool experience. Another one, and this one, very, very, very sensitive. Um, but we had one of our parents reach out because his son had been accused of something that he did not do, but very, very serious.
yeah,
And I got on the phone with him, and like it was a serious enough thing that the police had asked for the phone.
yeah.
And the police forensics lab reached out to him and said, "What kind of phone is this? We can't get into it." Which I loved, because
Yeah,
of
yeah,
the big impact we've put on security. But long story short, this dad was in tears with me. I talked to him on the phone, and he said the evidence that the police needed, that we're looking for, that exonerated his son and showed that he was not guilty of anything was in our remote text monitoring. The
Wow.
messages had been deleted everywhere else, but the police found in that remote text monitoring what they needed that kept this kid from having his life changed dramatically.
Yeah.
Which again, that's that kind of thing we hope doesn't happen very often. But thank goodness, we had that
Yeah.
feature there that helped in a tough situation.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool because it there's just so much that kids can, and let's face it, that kind of stuff kids have got into for years and years and years and decades and millennia. But the fact of the matter is, most kids have phones on them now. All this kind of stuff gets around, and they talk about it. And I can imagine where, if you are innocent in this kind of situation that you're speaking of, not being able to delete the text messages, but the text messages between the other kids and everything else that you've already approved remaining in the parent portal would be very valuable in that instance.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Huh. That's something. So it's really it's quite impressive, the thought that has gone into this, to really get something that, as your kids get older, you can adjust with them. So like, hey, they need to have this app that's for science or whatever it is. Now they need this or that, or they're ready to go into something else. You can just give them access to it as they need. So is there kind of a upper end that you really look at this phone and go, this is for this age, or is there not?
I love that question is on your mind. Um, what we're seeing is that a lot of families are finding that when you have the safe browser turned on, when you have apps enabled, that it can be because you've got half a dozen options for listening to music, that most kids are finding even at 15 and into 16. We got Google Maps on there for kids that are driving at
Okay.
16. Um, they're finding that it's relevant and still practical for them. That said, Damon, we want kids to graduate and grow out of what we're doing. We want
Yes.
them to be prepared for the next step. And that's another major philosophical difference between Troomi and some of our competitors that have this lock it down, don't trust them, lock it down mentality. That's just not where we're coming from. And by the time a kid is 17 years old and they're going to be leaving home in a year, I think they should be moving on, and they
Yeah.
should be learning how to have by this point, we hope they've learned very disciplined habits with technology, and they can graduate into that next device where you as the parent are feeling like, I have done everything I can to teach them positive habits, to not get them into some of the dangerous temptations when they were younger,
Yeah.
and now they're going to be leaving home and they're ready. That's what we want. That's what
Yeah.
we want.
Yeah, as we've talked before, that's just the way that your system and the phones can progress with these kids as they grow is something that I really like, because it is you become adults. There's things you just have to. It's not fend for yourself, but you have to be responsible for your own
Yeah.
actions. And it's time, like you said, you graduate to driving a car, you graduate to moving out of the house and finding a job and doing, and adulting, as we would say. And it is cool that you really are developing it so they can graduate beyond it.
I
Yeah.
had a conversation. I've had this conversation several times, but in one particular instance, I was talking to some parents whose 17 and a half-year-old son was still using one of these other completely locked down devices to talk and text only. And he resented it. Oh, he resented it. And when the young man was not around, and I said to his dad, what do you think is going to happen when he leaves home in 6 months?
Yeah.
Like if all of a sudden he goes from no access to the internet to unfettered access to the internet, he's not
Hmm.
built any positive constructive habits. That kid's going to be addicted to pornography in 2 weeks. He hasn't learned how to use technology responsibly. And yeah, so I think kids do need to learn and graduate, and have options that increase with their needs and maturity.
Well, yeah, it's just like you said, it's graduating into more and more responsibility as you get older, and to be able to then use it appropriately. Yeah, good stuff. So what do you see for the future of Troomi? So what are some exciting things on the horizon?
um, I'm going to be careful not to say too much
Yeah.
that where people are like holding me to it. Like you said on Damon's show that, you know, uh, but we do have some other products we're going to be coming out with that are
Oh, very
complementary
cool.
to the
Hmm.
phones. Um, right now, we're just focused on the United States, but we have
Yeah.
people from other countries reaching out. I hear from Canadians 2 or 3 times a week. I'm from
Yeah.
Canada, and so
Yeah.
that's always been at the top of my list. Um, and we're trying to figure out the regulatory environment is really, really difficult in Canada to start new cell phone companies right now. So, that's one to figure out. Sorry, Canada, we're trying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, in terms of what to watch for, we'll always be making improvements to our operating system, just like this big release that introduced the remote text monitoring. We've got some other very exciting stuff planned in that vein. Um, and then product diversification and eventually geographic expansion.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. Well, I'm so appreciate you stopping by today and talking with us, Bill. It's been awesome to get to learn more about Troomi and to really show how you're helping children build those healthy relationship with technology and give them something that they don't feel embarrassed about,
Yeah.
that can grow with them as they go into teenage years. So
Thank you. It's been great being on with you, and great to be with your listeners.
all right. Thanks so much. Well, everyone, thanks so much for stopping by. We will be back again later this week with more interesting guests talking about life and business. But today we had Bill Brady from Troomi Wireless talking about building healthy technology relationships. Thanks so much for being here today, Bill.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.